going to go rock hounding today. And so that's going to be our review. It's going to be a field trip. And we're going to northern New Mexico, past Santa Fe, kind of like directly across from Taos to the east. And we're looking for a rock that's called apatite. I could be pronouncing it wrong. Don't be mean if I am. And so that's what we're hoping to find today.
I doubt anyone will know if we are pronouncing it incorrect.
Oh, there's people.
We should expect some comments then.
Yeah. And we have Bradley with us. Can you say hi? He hides his face. And Hunter's all the way in the back. Right now we're still south of San Domingo Pueblo, which is south of Santa Fe. So we have a little ways to go.
Like an hour and a half. Right?
Yeah. We wanted to go last week, but a storm came in and I said, I don't want to go hunting in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd probably be kind of hard to find what we're looking for. So we're randomly got off today.
Yeah.
Because usually he's at work.
Yeah.
And so we're going today.
Yes.
He's interested in geology. That's
Yes.
what he's going to school for.
I don't know what it is. I can see people's objection, saying that geology is kind of boring or what have you, but for me it's like history, and I love history. So digging through rock and finding, uncommon rocks and gems and things like that, it's like treasure hunting.
Yeah, I think if you don't find geology interesting, then you're just ill-informed. And I mean that completely.
I mean that completely.
With no apologies.
Oh, okay. I thought you were setting yourself up to say something like, and I don't mean to be offensive, but
No.
you're like, and I fully mean that to be taken however you take that.
You take it how you want.
There you go.
So I became interested in specifically hounding for rocks because there's a channel I watched. His name is Reed Timmer. He loves hunting tornadoes. He used to be on the show. What is it called? Tornado Chasers or something like that. But now he just drives just daily whenever there's any kind of storm systems coming in. This guy just loves
Weather.
Loves tornadoes. Never stop chasing is his motto. But he had one of his episodes where he was, I think, with his sister and maybe his niece and nephew or nieces, I don't know. And they were in like South Carolina and they were looking for gems of some sort. Someplace, I don't know. They're finding really cool stuff. And so after watching that, I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like so much fun. If I ever go there, I want to go look. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, well, wait a second. We live in New Mexico and there's like an insane amount of types of rocks here. So why don't we just look around our own state? And so I went online looking to see what kind of rocks we could find in New Mexico. And I came across a website called Rock Hounding. And so then I told him, because he's really into geology, and I thought he was going to be like super ecstatic. And he was excited, but it wasn't like what I thought he would be. I think I was more excited.
I didn't fully know what you were proposing at first. It took a while to sink in, I guess, because it just kind of hit me out of the blue that we go, searching for rock, which I'm in for, obviously. But at first I was like, are we going to like a state park where they let you just dig around or something? Or I didn't know what was going on before.
That just reminds me of the episode from Married with Children when they're like, what was it? Hell, New Mexico or something like that. Remember?
Yeah.
What was it called?
I forget.
They have some name of it. And they're maybe you guys have seen that episode, and they're like, they buy this claim to this gold mine. We're going up a big hill, so I'm having to pop my ears. But so they go through this whole process of prospecting all this gold and stuff, and then turns out it was what you just described, this little park where you can dig for fool's gold. Exactly. Was it pyrite?
Yes.
I think pyrite is fool's gold. That's the name of it. And That's a really funny episode. Yeah, they mentioned New Mexico quite a few times on that show. I always find that intriguing that these shows, they'll mention New Mexico. You see a lot on The Simpsons and stuff like that, and back in the day, just like late 90s, when chatting on the internet used to be a thing.
Yeah.
They used to have chat rooms and stuff. We've talked about this on one of our other videos. And whenever I would say, like, I was from New Mexico, a lot of people didn't even know we're a state. So it's kind of intriguing to me that I wonder what people think when they actually see that on television shows. They probably think that they're actually in Mexico, the country.
I think we make it onto random shows and stuff because it's kind of a weird state in terms of its politics, its geography, its geology. I mean, it's a giant square, right? It's not like the Rio Grande River forms one of its boundaries. Except that as it moves into Texas, the very south there. It's large. It's like 538 miles across. So it's a decent, real strong, decent sized state. We have some of the best scientists in the world here at Los Alamos and Sandia Laboratories. They sell them cars often, and they are just some of the most intelligent people I've ever met.
Don't hit me, Bradley. That's not okay. You gotta be gentle.
Beyond that, we have, we're the most, with the exception of Hawaii, we're the most volcanous state in the United States. So, of the 48 mainland states, we're the most volcanous. You can be on some really, really dry, desert-like terrain, and then an hour away, you're 12,000 feet in the air, seeing cedars and things like that. Santa Fe is politically a pretty liberal place, and Albuquerque and Las Cruces, whereas all the surrounding areas are pretty conservative. So
Albuquerque, no.
It's
Albuquerque
not as liberal
and
as
Santa Fe, yeah, but Albuquerque and Santa Fe are pretty liberal, and the rest of the state's very conservative.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, you push out into the rural areas outside of the cities. That's what I mean. The cities are liberal, and outside the cities are more conservative.
Yeah. We're approaching, there's actually a movie set out here. When I filmed out there a couple times before on different movies I was on. It's actually, the set that's out there is actually old Western set, like a Western town, an old Western town. It's pretty neat. The set's actually back there. If you take that road where that car is going there, it's actually behind those hills there. And we're getting close to Santa Fe now. So it's a really cool channel. You should check him out. Subscribe to him. He's always doing live broadcasts of him chasing around some tornado. But I also have been watching, like right now, I've been currently into 2 different types of topics. And so I was just joking with him and saying, if we don't find any of this apatite stone, we're going to stop in Santa Fe and dumpster dive. Because that's something else I just started watching on YouTube, is dumpster diving. And it's insane the amount of stuff people find. And it's not like trash either. It's just like overstock that companies have. And they're not allowed to keep it as an employee. His sister actually used to work for a company. And she was telling us that they're not allowed to keep the jewelry. So she would have to throw out the jewelry. And so it's these companies throwing this really nice stuff. So I've been watching these YouTube channels of people dumpster diving and pulling out boxes, like literal boxes that haven't even been opened, of stuff. That's what I've been telling him about.
There's some good stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy good stuff, like furniture, like cabinets. Like I was seeing this one, and it was like an actual like cabinet, a really nice one with like a mirror. Really cool, brand new, still in the box. You just tossed it out. Sometimes I wonder if some of these employees are throwing out some of this stuff and like telling their friends, okay, come get it. It's in the dumpster. And one of these dumpster divers have already found it. So, I mean, I'm sure that takes place.
I would do it.
And there was, I was reading in the comments of one of them, this one person was saying they worked at some high-end store in New York, and they would have to throw out like whatever item it was, and they said they would have to destroy it and throw it out. And she was upset about it because she's like, why aren't they just selling this for cheaper? And they're saying because they don't sell that stuff for cheaper. They would rather destroy it in some way and toss it into the dumpster because they don't want the poor to get a hold of that item, because then the rich won't be as willing to pay the money for their product. So they would rather just throw it away than sell it and give it to the general population. So that all that kind of crap adds to our wasteful existence in the world, and the continuation of adding trash to landfills that is unnecessary.
Speaking of which, wastefulness or whatever, talking about renewable energy, I just remember about 10 years ago we dumped a lot of money as a country into solar business, and then it went by the wayside. And the amount that we dumped in there would have been close to enough to cover half of every home that we have in America in terms of putting solar power on the top of people's homes for free.
I remember that.
And if you think about it, if we did that, and we had the technology then, and we have it even more so today, then what you would essentially have is all the people providing power for everything else, which is kind of like an analogy to democracy or whatever. But that's aside, the actual practicality of it is that if you could provide enough power back through into the system, you can provide power for everything else that you can't power through solar or whatever. I mean, we would in by and large, and I know it's too simplistic to just say it would have been that easy, but we would have been on the right path there. Anyway, that always sticks out in my head when I think of the billions upon billions that we spent in some solar company when we could have just paid multiple solar companies to start putting solar panels on the roof of every house in America.
Right. Yeah, I remember that being a deal too. And it was pretty shocking and really sad. It's like, okay, that was a step not forward.
Yeah.
And more wasteful spending.
Spending more money on more nonsense.
We stopped at Starbucks, and Justin got really upset because he hates when we go through drive-thrus and I ask questions. But, you know, like, what am I supposed to do? Just read minds?
No, we go inside if we want to ask questions.
I ask questions
in the
when I'm
drive-through.
ordering. But I wanted to try this one thing they had. They didn't know what it was. They read me off the direction of, or the whatever they have listed on the menu. But anyway, I was like, okay, thanks. That was unhelpful. I read that myself. But so I ended up settling for this thing, and it's some type of pistachio frappe, which tastes zero like pistachio. And Justin got this. It was supposed to be a vanilla what?
Latte.
And it smells and tastes awful. Like, if you've ever been around someone who is like smoking and drinking coffee and like smoking like a train, that's what this smells and like tastes like. It has the taste of that. It's awful. So I said, I don't know what happened, but this tastes like burnt coffee or something.
I do want to put out there though, that's the first time I've ever got something from Starbucks that didn't taste good.
I get stuff from there that doesn't taste good all the time.
First time ever. And I'm a daily Starbucks connoisseur.
I am not.
First time ever. So Starbucks, you're doing pretty decent.
I'm not a daily
Whatever the hell
consumer.
this was, a little rough.
This was unacceptable. So I said, we got to stop at Starbucks and tell them you need to replace this drink because this is
I'm just gonna buy a new one.
horrendous.
There
I don't
it is.
have the money to continue to be a Starbucks person
It doesn't look
daily.
open, does it?
I'm sure it is. Yeah, I'm sure it's open. I've been there before.
I've never been.
We're in Santa Fe now. Maybe I haven't been there.
We're about to find out.
I think it was like went to the Dion's that's in this parking lot. When we were staying up here in Santa Fe. Came up and stayed in Santa Fe for the night. It sucked because they had the swimming pool closed because of COVID, of course. And us being in a blue state, everything's still closed and you still have to use masks here. 2 years later.
It's rough.
It's stupid.
Closed for
Closed.
the day. Sorry for the inconvenience. That's the first time. Excuse my
So
language.
they gave us a bad Starbucks at the last one, and then this one's closed for the day.
I refuse to accept that failure. I cannot believe that. Closed for the day.
Is there any other places to look for?
I mean, with snow around, I don't know how we would identify anything.
Yeah, true. So we finally made it here to the whatever this mine
This
is.
mine, yeah.
But it's owned by UNM.
Yeah.
And so you're not allowed to go to it unless you have permission from UNM. So,
Maybe we'll just send them an email and be like, well, we never heard no.
So we took that as a yes.
We took that as a yes.
And so there's quite a bit of snow actually up here.
Yeah.
And so I'm really sad. I was really looking forward to digging out some cool stones.
University of New Mexico is a publicly owned school, privately and publicly funded. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, well, if we were students there.
Yeah, and we both have spent thousands,
Yeah.
$40,000+ there. The least they can do is let us just tag along to dig up some stones. I'm just saying.
I mean, could you technically go on it if you had your student ID with you?
That's a good question.
Because it's technically property of UNM.
I still have it. I don't have it on me, but
Oh.
there wasn't a card reader there or anything.
So we ended up coming really far up,
Honestly.
past Santa Fe, past Espanola, and continued north towards Taos. And so we're kind of in the mountains, middle of nowhere.
We're in the mountains.
Literally. Yeah. Yep, literally in the mountains. And luckily we're in a 4-wheel drive. So this was snow from a week ago. I guess a week ago it's been. What did you think of that Ancient Aliens? You didn't get to finish it, but what you got to see of it? Changing of the DNA.
Well, 7% change in DNA, and I'm not a scientist that deals with that. I forget the exact name, but 7%.
Geneticist?
Yeah, that's a good geneticist, I suppose. 7% in 5,000 years seems like an awful lot. I would be willing to bet that typically in a 5,000 year period, you wouldn't see anything more than 0.007%.
That would only make sense.
You know?
Because if you have millions of years to get from ancient man to modern man,
Yeah.
how in what 3,000
In
years?
5,000.
5,000 years.
3,000 BC to now, there's a 7% change in our DNA.
That's a huge huge change.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't see how it could be anything else other than something else introduced into the DNA of Homo sapiens.
So then my question is, how do you then interpret the story of the fallen angels? Since
I interpret it as
them being aliens.
As them being what we would call aliens, extraterrestrials, and I don't think we should conjure up in our minds necessarily grays or anything necessarily like that. It could be any number of different type of extraterrestrial, maybe even something like the Nordics. They call the Nordics.
Yeah.
Large.
So then, do you think
creatures.
Do you think those creatures, whatever, would they then? Do you then still equate them or put them into the story of them being in heaven with God and being kicked out because they chose, according to the story, to turn against God, and so then God there kicked them out of heaven, right? And they fell to earth.
Yeah,
that's where you get the Nephilim.
Well, the quote unquote 200 that fell, that's recorded in the book of Enoch that you read about in the book of Genesis chapter 6. How do I want to put that? They were describing what they saw in the terms they had to describe it with.
Mm-hmm.
And being that at the time, they did not know that we were a sphere hanging in the emptiness of space, billions and trillions of miles from other spheres and from other stars, things that they didn't know that. So all they see is some sort of humanoid type being descending out of the sky, introducing themselves into human populations, and then creating different looking human, non-human hybrids. Now they describe these beings with the vernacular that they had, which was some sort of divine being or angels, as it's come down through the wording through the ages to us now.
Yeah.
The original word that they used, divine being of some sort, is what they had. That's all they had to describe it with. And so now, knowing what we know about the universe being expansive and multiple different dimensions, things of that nature, we now have the vernacular and the understanding to see what they described as some sort of divine being as an extraterrestrial being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but do you then say that these did not exist with God?
Well, that's... all they knew is that above us, all the ancients knew is that above us is the divine.
It's the heavens.
Is the heavens. So when these things came down from above, from the heavens, then the only thing they had to describe is, well, they came down from being with God.
Okay. And then
so
where did they get this story, or how are they told that they had chose to turn against God? Where does that information come from?
That's a great question, and I couldn't really answer that.
It's just written there.
Well, it's written there, but that's their interpretation of what happened.
Oh.
Or perhaps there's usually some nugget of truth in the expansive story. So perhaps it was the case that these beings really did inhabit an extraterrestrial realm where God does exist, where God is existent, or maybe they just understand in their advanced society or what have you, that God really being spirit is omnipresent, and so something of that nature. But the hard word by word explanation of these non-terrestrials beings coming down to mate with terrestrials, I think a lot of it was a lot of the story is simply limited based on the vernacular that they had available to them at the day, on the day. And then from there, as it was written down and then translated, there's a solid nugget of truth there, but not every word, I believe, is accurate.
Yeah, maybe it's something like they were in wherever they were, maybe even planet, who knows, where they, a realm you describe, and maybe God had told them they're not allowed to,
Yeah.
mate with humans.
Right. You were trying
They
to
had
allow
the-
them to develop on
Yeah.
their own. Do not
Maybe-
go mate with them.
Yeah, maybe, you know, he saw that they're already a society that has existed for thousands of years, and they had the ability to then travel, you know, this time back then. And then God's like, you can't, if you're going to start traveling, you just do not mess
Right.
with them.
You don't go to
Yeah.
what we call Earth.
Yeah. And start breeding with them.
Right.
Like, that's a separate
Right.
being that I created,
Right.
and that's
Exactly.
what they are. You guys are you guys,
Yeah.
and I don't
And
want you guys
I don't want the
crossing.
crossover, and
Yeah.
perhaps it was the case that because in Genesis 6 it describes how that when the interbreeding took place and things like that, the mind of man became very, very, very clouded and very sinful, for lack of a better word, became very sinful. And as that's the case, hold on, Bradley Bear. So it could have been the case that the only vernacular they had to describe it was things changed once these non-terrestrials, they didn't have this vernacular, these non-terrestrials mated with us, the terrestrials, and things went downhill from there. And then you have the flood judgment story after that. But what I'm trying to get at is some level of this is a core of truth. It's just like the game of telephone.
What are you going to do with it? Show them what you do. Show them what you do.
Whoa.
Riley, can you say hi?
Hi, Mom.
Hi to them. Say hi.